Hi, I'm Nick Seberg. Welcome to One Day Ahead. This is a video for anyone teaching To Kill a Mockingbird, and it supplements my To Kill a Mockingbird summary and analysis series. If you haven't yet, check out all of that at onedayahead.com, along with all my other series and units for a bunch of other books. Here, I'm going to talk you through my comprehensive To Kill a Mockingbird teaching unit you've either just bought or are considering buying. And thank you, by the way. I'm going to take you step by step through everything in the unit so you know what you are getting yourself into. So let's go. The files themselves are organized into 3 folders. Things to do before reading, while reading, and after y'all are done. But please note, this unit is a grab bag. I'm throwing more at you than you are going to want to do, so size it all up and pick the things that make sense for your kids and your schedule. When you download it, the unit will come at you as a zip file. Right-click on it, choose extract, and then you're all set. You'll see that before, during, and after file structure I mentioned, and you'll notice everything is formatted as Word documents. However, I also compiled this whole thing into one giant 119-page PDF. Please don't print it. If you're in the Google Drive world, you can drag and drop that top folder into Google Drive, and it will not only copy the files, but also the organization structure as well, which is real handy. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to walk us through that giant PDF that has everything. The table of contents is all hyperlinks, and the first thing on the list is a sample calendar. This is by request from a number of One Day Ahead members who, it's just meant to give you a general feel for the flow and the pacing. Next, we move to the before reading section. These are activities and resources I do before we crack open the book. The first thing, To Kill a Mockingbird overview, is a big picture, 2-page look at the historical context. It gives a character list and a bunch of themes. I make it available. I don't require it, but it's helpful for some students to get that grounding and have something to refer back to. The next 3 pages are called Fingerprints of Jim Crow. This is a resource I use to begin our discussion of racism and Jim Crow in the South's Reconstruction era. I do pass this out and use it to underpin a class discussion. We read that first section together to take care of the perennial, but why is it called Jim Crow question, and then I have students peruse the list and discuss the absurdity and specificity of these laws. Be sure to point out the one from Alabama about playing dice and dominoes and checkers together, and elicit the recognition that these laws are largely social in nature. There's not much here about the tax code. Kids from different races playing together was seen as a very real threat. We are attempting to legislate what children believe by limiting their experiences. Your students will run with that. Further contextualization is on offer with 1933 Then and Now. Basically, it's what did stuff cost then, and boy isn't that weird, and it turns out everything costs a nickel. We end that one by having them imagine their life had they been young in 1933. It's creative writing, contextualization, it's kind of fun. 2 more major pieces wrap up the before reading section. I recommend you pick one. The first visual story project is a jigsawed approach to historical context that might be good to know. We do the Dust Bowl, Great Depression, Civil War, Scottsboro. The students get into group, pick one topic, research, gather visual evidence, then script and present to their peers. I've included a rubric, and it's a real good way for everyone to learn a little bit about a lot. If you don't go that way, consider famous trials. So I've pulled some really broad strokes information about 5 wildly famous trials. We got OJ, Lizzie Borden, Galileo, George Zimmerman. I hang these around the room gallery style. So students move through the room, they read the briefs, and then they predict the verdict in each case, because I don't tell them that. I've also included a teacher cheat sheet in case you can't quite remember what happened to Galileo. He was found guilty of murder. So this whole activity is only really worth it for the discussion afterward, where we need to shatter the idea that the criminal justice system somehow operates outside the context of the culture in which it is set. The interplay between culture and court is in all 5 of these cases. And you know what? It comes up in the book. So that's it for before. Let's move on to during reading. And the first thing here is the biggest thing. If this unit has a center or a spine, it would be book groups. I want you to put your kids in groups of no more than 5 and spend some time setting those norms and building those relationships, because we're going to do this a lot. This crew is going to meet every 5 chapters to hold a student-led discussion. Now, in this unit, I gave you 2 ways to structure those every 5 chapter discussions. There's the everyone is responsible for everything method, which uses this document. Basically, you're going to read chapters 1 through 5, and we will meet on this date. When the kids show up, they have done some thinking about a theme, more on that later, and they have pulled 2 quotes and thought up 3 discussion questions. Then they come together and they talk about it. I give them 20 minutes to discuss in small groups, then I ask each small group to bring something interesting to the whole group discussion. This is a great approach. It's open, it's fun, and some of the best stuff from my analysis series have come from those discussions. But if that sounds a little too open for your situation, the next 12 pages are for you. Here, the kid is still asked to read chapters 1 through 5, but they are also assigned a letter, A, B, or C. They come to small group discussions having prepared responses to one question per chapter. Then they do themes, quotes, questions just like before. This leads to slightly more supported group discussions, which might be a good thing. Finally, and this is a style thing, after 3 discussion group meetings, when it becomes clear who is reading and who is not, I pull anyone who simply isn't prepping, as long as they don't have accommodations or something like that, and I pull them all into one group. If it's an effort thing, I am not going to let them be a drag on the kids who are reading and prepping and trying. Page 34 has all those discussion questions in one place in case you want them, and now we are into activities that are tied to specific chapters. The first is called Walking in Someone Else's Shoes, which is chapter 3. This refers to one of the oft-quoted famous lines from Atticus, "You can't understand a person until you walk in their shoes." Except that's not actually what he says. The quote is really climb into his skin and walk around in it, which is quite gross if you think about it. I'm still waiting for my Mockingbird Silence of the Lambs crossover. Anyway, I give you these questions and a bunch of pictures of shoes, and the students do an activity where they imagine who owns them. Really, we are teaching them to profile using footwear. Alternately, and this is really how I do this, I ask all the students to bring in a single shoe that isn't there. We throw them all in the middle, and then each kid picks a different one out, and we do the same thing. Next up, from chapter 11, we have a very solid background reading on morphine addiction. This is informational text. It is great for some close reading exercises, and it comes with 3 discussion questions at the end. Eyewitness testimony comes from chapters 17 through 19. This is a way for students to track the accounts of what happened at the Ewell cabin from the testimony of Heck, Bob, Mayella, and Tom, as well as the reactions of the children and themselves. Now, chapter 24 is the missionary tea, and I have 2 activities attached to that. The first is the breathtaking hypocrisy of Miss Merriweather. I love yelling about how much I hate Miss Merriweather in class, and this is a good way to get some art going in this project. Students are asked to capture her hypocrisy or express their loathing for her through art. This one is fun, colorful, and a nice change of pace after the trial and Tom's death, which gets really heavy. The other activity is slightly more analytical in nature. We dive into what it means to be a lady for the characters and for the students. We are going to go full-on gender stereotypes and look at how that shapes behavior within the novel. And that's it for the chapter-specific activities. So you have discussion groups going every 5 chapters, you have these activities attached to specific chapters, you have the quizzes, and you have the vocab, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But the other thing you need to know, the other pillar of this unit, is I also use To Kill a Mockingbird to teach about theme. That is the new skill I am embedding along with this text, and it's why you see theme questions included in every discussion group document. So here's the deal. Somewhere in this unit, you need to carve out some time to teach some standalone lessons about theme. I put it here on the same day that we have our first discussion group, and I pepper in some practice along the way if I think they need it. Teaching theme is a full-on lesson plan. You are going to walk students through the difference between topics and themes, and you are going to put them through a 4-step process where they find the theme of a simple-to-understand media like a children's book or Disney movies. Most of what I do here, I actually cribbed from YouTube. There's a video called The Only Way You Will Ever Need to Teach Theme by Sarah Johnson. It is excellent. So for theme, you have the lesson plan, worksheets for students, Sarah's video, and an example. Kids find this work very hard, but stay with it because it is worth it and they can do it. There is some really valuable thinking for students here. Next up in the PDF, you will see a bunch of resources for a Southern tea party. So this really could have gone in the after reading section as well, but I put it during reading because it takes some prep. So this is a super fun, it's a celebration of the book and their hard work, and it helps close out the experience of this novel in a way that isn't just like take a test or write an essay. Basically, for the Southern tea, we are going to dress up like a character, do some Southern cooking, and come to a tea party. So you got a bunch of stuff. You have an invitation. You have signups for food and characters. You have a getting into character reflection document and some readings on proper tea etiquette, conversation starters, which I leave around the room, and a Southern slang document, which gets, it's like lightly PG. It's like it's PG-12. A couple notes on the tea party. 1, you should totally do it. Ham it up hard. Give students time to pull together a costume and make a day out of it. Yell mingle every 2 minutes and make everyone rotate and have conversations. Inevitably, Burris comes with cooties in his hair. We put the kid playing Boo in the closet and he only peeks out to throw blankets and gum at people. I've seen some darkly funny renditions of Miss Dubose, and Nathan Radley is always limping around with scissors in his leg. But also, number 2, a word of warning. If the wheels are ever going to come off with this unit, it is here. Kids caught up in a character can push the boundaries and say some stuff. So don't skip the whole, where is the line conversation before you do this activity with your students. I do that by publicly crossing Bob's name off the invite list, because Bob is not welcome at the party. He is vile, he is full of hate. And though nearly everyone in the book is a terrible racist by our standards, that part of them is not welcome either. And though it is obvious, make sure you say no one should darken their skin color for our tea party. No one should use racist language or make disparaging remarks at our tea party. Like I said, if ever the wheels were going to come off. I've been doing this for years. I've never had anything like a problem, but don't skip that conversation. So the rest of the docs in the during reading section are resources for chapter quizzes, if that's your thing, and vocabulary work broken down by chapter. Use it or don't. Finally, we have what I do in the after reading section. The first one is the biggie, which is a full-on essay about themes within the novels. This is what we have been building toward with those discussion groups and all of the theme practice. The prompt is wide open. What is the most important theme from To Kill a Mockingbird, and how was that theme developed throughout the story? I have students submit their thesis in writing. We workshop those until they are shiny, specific, and interesting, and then we cut them loose to write. I have included a complete rubric as well as a paint-by-number, high-support outline for those developing writers. Okay, 2 more things. If you have time for the movie, go for it. Gregory Peck won an Oscar. Fine. I really hate those what's the difference between the book and the movie assignments, so I do this as an award show. Students nominate for silly things like the most overacted scene or the nailed it award or what piece of memorabilia would be the coolest to have today. They nominate, they argue, it's fun. I stole a lot of this from the Rewatchables podcast, which I enjoy. Mostly, it's a chance to engage with the film and argue with each other. And last up, we have a full-on test with quotes and questions and short essay answers. I don't use this, but it feels like I have to have it for you. I don't know, doing my best here. And that's it. That's how I teach To Kill a Mockingbird. Between these materials and the content in the videos, especially the deep dive quote analysis stuff, you have everything you need to empower students to engage them in complex, honest, and insightful literature analysis. Check out the other video in this series where I talk more generally about how I teach this book, the philosophy of it, and some very specific pitfalls to avoid. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out my videos and teaching unit over at onedayahead.com. That's it for now. We'll see you next time on One Day Ahead.